So I'm looking at downside here on the DXY because the order flow is still bearish and we still have an open weekly demand zone. So my name is Oscar Maas and I'm a funded trader as well as a personal trading coach. And with this video, I'm trying to go over all of the Forex pairs to see what we're up to for next week. So as you can see here, we're starting off with the dollar on the weekly time frame, and we can see we're bullish. So in the long term, I'm looking for upside, but at the moment we still have a refined demand zone open, which is this sell before the buy where we could trade in. So this supply over here, this buy before this sell, is still in control and could still push price down lower in towards this demand. So that's also what I'm looking for next week. Going over to the dollar, you can also see that this supply is in control, and again it could push price back down lower in towards this refined daily demand. Then on the 4 hour, you can see that we are also structure wise bearish, and that we with this bearish order flow could just continue to trade down lower. As you can see, this is our internal trend and we could just continue that down lower in towards that weekly demand. Now, of course, after breaking structure, we could see a pullback in towards the 50%, but when this order flow is in control, we could already trade down lower. If we break the order flow bullish, we could see a retracement towards that 50% level, and then I'm looking for shorts. Overall, next week, I'm looking for shorts. And how do I know if it's going to go over to the 50% and then down lower or already down lower? Well, when it starts to break those fractal lows. This is my fractal low. I want to see that break, and then maybe another swipe, and then I could go short here on the dollar. If not, and we just respect this fractal low, we could just continue up higher towards that 50% and then take shorts from there, taking this liquidity out. Going over to EURUSD on the weekly time frame first, you can see the order flow is also still bullish. This demand was in control, pushed price back up higher. Now we have this demand, so this could also push price back up higher, and as you can see, we have an open supply where we could trade towards with some open liquidity as well to target. So overall on the EURUSD, I'm looking for longs. On the daily time frame, you can also see that the order flow is clearly bullish as well. So we are bullish here on EURUSD, but this demand is in control and could push price back up higher. Looking over here on the left, there's no real supply zone, only all the way up here. So we could see a push up higher all the way in towards that refined supply before looking for any shorts. So next week, I'm definitely looking for those long setups. Going over to the 4 hour, yeah, we do have all of that liquidity underneath the lows, but we're 4 hour bullish. And like I said, the daily order flow is bullish, as well as the 4 hour order flow with this demand in control, and this could push price back up higher. Now you can also see that we already broke the 4 hour fractal over here at this high, and that this is now your little demand in control, which could push price back up higher. So we have some liquidity underneath this low. We could swipe this, then see another 4 hour fractal or something in that case, looking on the lower time frame for confirmation to take long setups in towards the highs, and of course maybe even higher in towards those daily supply zones. So this is the first option, just the same as the DXY, could already trade up higher with this order flow, but this could also give one more swipe, swiping all of this liquidity, tapping the discount prices, and then we could trade up higher. So how do we see which one we're going to get? Well, of course, if we see that we break to the upside, then we could look for longs. If we respect those highs, we could first see a retracement before moving up higher. Going over to GBPUSD, I was already looking for those longs, but let's explain them. So as you can see, we are here inside this supply zone, which is currently holding price back down lower and pushing it back down lower in towards this demand zone. So overall, we're bearish, but I see the dollar should trade down lower. So that's why I'm definitely looking for EURUSD and GBPUSD, or in general, those dollar or XXX dollar longs. So as you can see, we have liquidity above all of these highs. This is definitely something what we could take out in the near future. So you can see this demand is in control and could still push price up higher. So we do have weekly bullish order flow. On the daily time frame, we are also daily structure wise bullish we grab liquidity underneath this low, we traded in towards this overall demand, and we perfectly tapped discount prices. So I am definitely looking at upside here on the GBPUSD. So this supply is also in control, so that's something that is quite tricky because this could push price down lower and then we could see upside. But still, when we see confirmation on the 4 hour, I could take those long setups because I'm heavily bearish on the dollar, definitely with the fundamentals where the US attacked Iran. So going over to the 4 hour, what do we see? Well, the same structure, same discount prices, and also a demand zone over here on the 4 hour, which we perfectly tapped, and now we could trade up higher. We also grab liquidity underneath the lows, so this could fuel the next move up higher. We also see that from this demand, we created a new demand and then a new demand, and this also takes out liquidity. So now we could definitely push up higher in towards those highs and make a new swing high on the 4 hour. So this is one possibility, or for me, we could also trade in towards this refined demand zone because people are now buying and buying because they see that we perfectly tap discount prices, took liquidity, and now have bullish order flow. So it could swipe all of those early buyers, let's say, and then once we tap this refined demand, we could start to trade up higher. That's a possibility. What am I waiting for? Either this high to break to then go long, or to see that high getting respected where we trade down lower, and then from this refined demand I will look at some more long setups. So that's my go-to for GBPUSD. Looking at NZDUSD, I'm not going to long this even though it's an XXX USD pair, and the reason is of risk on and risk off pairs. So we have certain pairs that act as a safe haven like the yen and the Swiss franc when there's uncertainty around the world. But when there's uncertainty like the attack on Iran, we have some pairs that fall off like NZD, AUD and Canadian dollar. So those tend to drop. So that's why I'm not looking for longs here on NZDUSD, and that's why I'm also not going to trade them. But let's look at them from a technical point of view. So from a technical point of view, you can see that we now broke this low, right? Because what happened? We traded up higher, we then traded down lower, and then we traded up higher, and now we trade down lower again, creating this supply zone where we now could trade down lower from. So what do we now see? We have this open supply zone on the weekly time frame, which we missed, but we created a new one. So now we gotta see, do we already trade down lower from this new freshly created supply that took out liquidity, or are we going to see one more swipe tapping this weekly supply zone and then trading down lower? That's something we gotta wait for, but with all the war going on, I could expect it to already trade down lower. That's why we look on the lower time frame, which is now the daily and the 4 hour, to see if we could already trade down lower. So on the daily, we can also see that we have bearish order flow because this supply is now in control, and this supply could now push price back down lower to take all of this trendline liquidity and maybe tap in towards this refined daily demand zone. So on the daily, I'm definitely looking for downside, even though we have that weekly and even daily supply still open. From this supply, I'm looking for 4 hour confirmation, and then I will look for those shorts, even though the dollar should drop. But still, this is a risky play, but still very possible. Looking on the 4 hour, we have all of that trendline liquidity. Now it's even more clear. We do have here an open refined supply, because what is your overall supply? This is your overall supply, but this is my refined supply, which we didn't tap. Yeah, so we didn't tap it, as you can see. So what we could see is a possible move up higher with that dollar that could push price down lower, taking liquidity above this high, tapping this supply zone. And if we then start to break the lows again, then I'm definitely going to be shorting NZDUSD to take out all of the liquidity because of the fundamentals. Even though we're 4 hour bullish, right? So even though we're 4 hour bullish, I'm looking at the fundamentals here, and I see that we have a lot of liquidity. So that's why even though we're bullish, I'm looking for those shorts. AUDUSD, same story, could drop fundamentally, so that's also what I'm looking for. So as you can see here on the weekly time frame, also looks very clean to trade down lower. Or why? Because we are bearish, we took liquidity above this high, and we got that retracement all the way up higher in towards those 50% levels. So once we tap that, and as you can see, we already see a reaction, we could start to trade down lower and make a new swing low. So that's also what I'm expecting. Currently, this amount is still in control, but with that liquidity and at 50%, we could definitely trade down lower. Looking at the daily time frame, you can also see that after this liquidity grab, we do have this supply still open, which is definitely something to keep in mind, because we possibly could see one more swipe with the dollar that could drop, because when the dollar drops, this pair trades up higher, and then we could see some upside, and then AUD and NZD could start falling and we could see a drop. So definitely keep that in mind before trading this pair, that you want to be patient, because the dollar and the AUD are now fundamentally against each other, because they both want to drop. So now this supply is in control though, and this could definitely push price down lower. So from this supply, we could definitely see those lower prices taking out all of this liquidity. Here on the daily time frame, you can also see that we trade down lower, then up higher, breaking structure, and now we could also see that pullback towards the 50% levels, or at least that liquidity. So what am I now looking for on the 4-hour time frame? To see some confirmation from this supply in order to take those shorts. But we could also see that swipe happen in towards this refined supply and then down lower. Now thinking of this, I might go back to NZDUSD and think something that is going to be the same. So like I said, we have this weekly supply open, right? And a lot of people know that fundamentally when there's uncertainty around the world, NZD should drop. That's why they could short NZDUSD. So now that everyone is shorting this pair, we could see one more swipe, also finishing this third tap, and then take liquidity above this high, tap this supply, and then trade down lower. Then we swipe a lot of stop losses above this high, and then we could take all of the lows out. So this is definitely possible, so I won't be too aggressive with taking any short setups. Now why is this possible even though we are like fundamentally bearish? Well, because the dollar drops first, pushing this pair up higher. We tap that supply, and then the dollar already dropped, but then NZD and AUD should drop later on. So then we should see a drop on NZD AUD once we tap this supply zone. So that is my play for next week, but we gotta see what the 4-hour gives us and if we could already trade down lower. So that's my analysis as well on AUDUSD here. We are bullish as well here on AUDUSD, so we could definitely see those higher prices, but we gotta keep in mind that the order flow is still bearish with this supply being in control. But overall, yeah, like I said, if we see something like this confirmation, we could take short setups over here. But if you see that dollar is going to drop really hard, then we could see a swipe of all the highs, tapping the daily supply. And over here, I'm definitely 100% going to look for shorts. So this is my best opportunity to take short setups. Going over to EURAUD, what does this then mean? Well, let's take a look first at the weekly time frame. We're weekly bullish. We tapped this demand, also discount prices, and we got a reaction from that, trading up higher. The only thing that I do not like at all is that we didn't take any liquidity. You can see in this move up, there's no liquidity at all. And the first liquidity is at this point. So I want to see that swipe before moving up higher. So let's see if we can get that. But yeah, that's something we need to see at the lower time frame, or on the lower time frame, because now what do we see? We have bullish order flow here on the daily time frame after tapping discount prices. So we could also just trade up higher, definitely take this liquidity out, and then either from there decide to trade down lower to take liquidity at that weekly liquidity and then trade up higher, or if we just continue to trade up higher with that bullish order flow that we have over here. So currently I'm looking at upside here on EURAUD. Looking at 4-hour, what can I see? Well, of course, for our bullish order flow, we also took some liquidity out at these lows, so that's definitely great. And now after we break this high, we create a new demand zone, and then from there we could see upside to take liquidity above these highs. So we all have this trend line liquidity. That's something I would like to see. So currently I'm just looking at longs until that liquidity. How am I looking at longs? Once we break this high, we create a new demand zone. Then I would want to see a retracement, maybe taking some liquidity, and then I want to see my 4-hour fractal break inside this demand. And then once we get that fractal break to the upside, I'm going to take some long setups, possibly towards that liquidity. Going over to GBPAUD, looking on the weekly time frame, what do we see again? Well, on the weekly, it's very clear that we still have this open demand zone over here, and that we have liquidity at these lows. So it could happen that we see a move down lower, taking all of that liquidity, tapping this demand, and then just continue up higher with all that bullish order flow. So that's definitely what I'm looking for here on GBPAUD. Going over to the daily time frame, we are bullish. We tapped discount prices over here, so we could continue up higher. What is the order flow telling me? Well, currently the order flow is bullish. Reason for this is, and it might not seem like that because a lot of people would say that this supply is in control and could push price down lower, but that is not really the case. Why is that not the case? Because, or actually, order flow is bullish because of this demand. So not that first demand that I said, but this demand. Reason is that we started to trade up higher, lower, higher, lower, higher, lower, higher, lower, and then we just traded up higher. So this demand is currently still in control, and this is our last demand, which is now in control. So looking at the weekly, even though the daily is in control, the daily order flow is still bullish, we could still see that downside because of that higher weekly, daily, or weekly demand. But we have those liquidity lows also, which we could take out and then trade up higher. So currently, if we respect those highs, because we took liquidity above this high, which I'm going to show you, we took liquidity above that high, and then what can we see? We're respecting the highs at all time, and now we could also respect that high and trade down lower. So that's definitely possible. It is counter what I'm looking for Euro AUD, but still we could see that downside happen. Looking on the 4-hour, what do I see? Well, on the 4-hour, we have all of that liquidity, like I said. Let's see. So we know this is our daily demand in control, but on the 4-hour, the order flow is bullish. So why is it bullish? Because this demand is in control. Reason for this is, let's see, because we tapped this demand and then we broke structure to this upside, creating new demand. This is now in control. So what I'm now looking for is definitely from the supply zone in the beginning of the week, looking for shorts in towards this liquidity low and this demand. So is it going to be on a 4-hour? Probably not. Probably on the 1-hour and a 15-minute after we see confirmation from the supply and this liquidity. Looking at the lower time frame, a fractal break or liquidity swipe, then fractal break. That's something I still got to see, but then I want to take those shorts, taking liquidity, trading towards demand, because from this demand we could either trade up higher in line with that daily order flow, or we could also just continue up higher. So even though we have two options, we still could trade this short in the beginning of the week, which we are about 90% sure of, or that's just what I'm looking for. It just completes my checklist, right? So that's what I'm looking for GBPAUD. After we tap this demand, am I going to take any trades? Probably not, because like I said, there are both ways where we could go to. So it would be too tricky to take an actual trade because it's not an A+ setup. So probably my go-to is this short in the beginning of the week on Monday, and then we could see later on the week for more development, and then I'll see you next week on this pair. So going over to EURNZD, on the weekly time frame, you can see the exact same thing. Demand still open, liquidity still open, could still trade down lower. Now I'm looking at the liquidity. We took a lot of liquidity above the high, so I was looking to take liquidity at the lows. Now that we took some more liquidity above the high, we could definitely see some downside, eventually taking liquidity at those lows and then trading up higher again. So that's also still what I'm looking for, looking at the weekly play. So this is not my daily structure. This is my daily structure because this over here is as big as my internal structure. So this is my internal structure inside my swing structure. And as you can see, this is all just as big. So this is my internal and not my swing. I hope this is clear. If not, you guys could comment it down below and I could make a new video on that. But what do I see at the moment? We didn't yet tap the discount prices because we traded up higher from this high. We then trade down lower, but we didn't yet tap that blue line, the 50%. The order flow kept being bullish with this demand now being in control. So yeah, at the moment we could also still see some upside, but am I going to take longs? No, because I still want to see trading down lower towards that liquidity on the weekly, like I said, and those discount prices. So what am I waiting for? Maybe not for next week, maybe yes, but I'm waiting for the daily order flow to switch bearish, something like this, creating a supply zone in control. Then I'm going to go over to the 4-hour, look inside this supply zone for 4-hour confirmation to then trade down lower and take out all of the lows. So that's my play here on EURNZD. On the 4-hour, I will tell you the same. So yeah, that's currently what I'm waiting for. Yeah, we also took liquidity above this high. Am I going to take those short setups towards possibly this liquidity? That is definitely possible though. But yeah, I would like to take any short setups after the daily order flow is bearish, because this order flow over here could be strong and could just push price back up higher. So let's see, there's also no real supply over here, so we just gotta see. If we do see confirmation, something like this, and then maybe a second break, we could then start to look for shorts, trading towards this possible liquidity, maybe setting our trade at break even once we tap this amount. But once we switch the order flow over here on the daily time frame, those are the A+ setups to take actual longs, but that's not going to be for next week. So what I'm waiting for after this liquidity, which we just grabbed, I'm looking for a fractal break in order to take my shorts towards this demand, possibly on the lower time frame because it's a smaller move. Going over to GBPNZD, this is quite tricky for me. Reason being is we tapped this refined demand over here, took liquidity underneath this low, and as you can see, we took some liquidity above these highs already, but we still have some more left. So overall, we could see some upside to take liquidity at the highs. Again, we tapped demand, we took liquidity, we could trade up higher. But whilst grabbing liquidity underneath this low, we gotta keep in mind that the order flow switched bearish with this supply now being in control, which could push price back down lower. So keep that in mind. Now overall, even though the weekly order flow is still bearish, I still see that liquidity get taken out, and from this amount, this is a perfect point in also that liquidity to fuel the next move up higher. So I'm going to go over to the daily time frame, look at the order flow over there to see if we could trade up higher or not and trade down lower with that weekly order flow. So going over to that daily then, what do I see? Well, we are daily bullish. We already made our pullback, taking liquidity, tapping demand and creating bullish order flow. At the moment, we have bearish order flow because we have this supply being in control, but I could see this high getting swiped. Then we create bullish order flow again, and then we could take long setups towards a new swing high. So that's my game plan here on GBPNZD. First, we gotta see that like order flow switch, and then inside that daily demand that's going to be created, we could take long setups based on the 4-hour time frame. So on the 4-hour time frame, we are bearish. As you can see over here, we're bearish. We also tapped the premium prices and perfectly got a reaction down lower, but you can see that we are failing to break the lows. Over here we had a low, we failed to break that low and traded up higher, and then even after tapping 50% we trade down lower, but as you can see we are kind of failing to break this low, right? Definitely if we break this high, then we could definitely start to look for longs. So that's my game plan here for next week. If we break this high, then I want to see a little retracement, maybe grabbing some liquidity. Then I want to see a 4-hour change of character or fractal break in towards the upside, and then I'm going to take long setups first to this liquidity, and of course, like we said on the daily, we could eventually trade towards that daily swing high. So definitely everything is possible here when taking your long setup. You do not have to keep in mind where you're going to set your target, because there's enough upside room. Going to go over to AUDNZD. We called it previous week upside here on AUDNZD, and as you can see, this should be now the amount in control. But let's look first at the weekly time frame. So we have bullish order flow, we took liquidity underneath this low, so I just want to see some upside because we also have some liquidity above the highs as well. Looking on the daily time frame, what do I see? So on the daily time frame, I want to see when Trump announced the tariffs. So as you can see, Trump announced the tariffs right over here at this candle, and this is a bearish candle. So what does this mean? Well, when the tariffs were announced, that's going to be a risk sentiment, right? Because there was a lot of uncertainty around the world. That means that this is going to be bearish, and that this pair, even though it's AUD and NZD, it's still going to drop when there's uncertainty around the world. So with that war that is going on in Iran, we could see a drop happen on AUDNZD. Even though we're looking for upside here on AUDNZD, we could still see that drop happen because of the fundamentals, right? Because there's uncertainty around the world. Now, we do have this amount, which also where we took some liquidity, internal liquidity, and now we could see some upside. Now we gotta break this daily fractal to confirm that we could trade up higher, because still this supply is still in control and could push price back down lower, right? Because that's our order flow. Okay, so looking at the 4-hour time frame, what do I see? We are bullish, we tapped discount prices, and we took some liquidity, and now we created a bullish order flow. So am I going to take those long setups? Probably not, because of the fundamentals that could push price down lower. Now I'm going to read a lot about the fundamentals and what's going to happen, so my bias could switch fundamentally based on the war or anything else, and then we could see some upside here on AUDNZD. Currently I'm not going to take any shorts here, even though it's fundamentally bearish, because technically I just see upside here on this pair. So I'm not going to go against my technicals, but also not against my fundamentals. So I'm not going to long or short. If the fundamentals change bullish, then I'm going to take long setups. Otherwise, I'm not going to trade this pair. If the fundamentals change bullish, I would like to see this low go, and then another fractal break in towards the upside, taking my long setup. But like I said, only when the fundamentals are in line, I'm going to take my setups. Looking over here at USD Swiss, what do I see here on the weekly time frame? Well, this supply is still in control and could still push price down lower. We do see that we failed to break the low, so we could also push up higher. But as we've seen with the war, this is probably going to dump the dollar down lower, so we could see a swipe underneath this low before moving up higher towards that 50% level. Also, like I said before, the Swiss franc, USD Swiss, the Swiss franc should be bullish because of a safe haven currency. When there's uncertainty, they go to the Swiss franc and the yen, so this should push up higher. Now, because it's a second pair over here, this pair should dump down lower. So also for every Swiss pair and yen pair, like with XXX Swiss, that's when I'm looking to go short, right? So we're going to go over those pairs, but I'm only shorting those pairs. But let's see what we're up to on the technical part of view, to see what we're going to take next week. Currently, we have a great supply and control, which is also our order flow, so shorts wouldn't be too bad because fundamentally this pair could definitely drop down lower. Now, what do I see as well? We have this supply currently in control, which could push price back down lower towards this low, and also this is probably my daily swing as well because we've made a nice pullback. So this is my daily low, and as you can see, I'm just looking for some downside over here. But after we swipe this low, I am looking for longs. Why is that? Because fundamentally it should not be bullish, but actually it is, because the Swiss franc doesn't like its currency to be so high, right? Because if this pair drops, its currency is gaining value, and that's not what the Swiss franc wants. And they want to cut rates, and this will drop the Swiss franc, which should push this price back up higher, right? So that's what I'm waiting for. If we see a swipe underneath this low, I would like to see the order flow switch bullish from this demand, looking for longs again. Now at the moment I'm still looking at shorts, and then once I read about the Swiss franc actually going to cut rates, then I'm again bullish on this pair. So on the 4 hour, you can also see we're definitely 4 hour bearish. This is not my structure. Why not? Because it's internal, in line with the internal trend. Now, this is my supply and control, like we've set on the daily time frame. And then what can we see? Let's remove those errors real quick. We have the 50% still open, as well as a supply zone and some liquidity, which we could take out before moving down lower. But like we've seen on the daily, the order flow is still bearish, so we could first continue down lower before moving to that 50%, and then maybe trade down lower again or move up higher. But currently, I'm definitely looking for this low to get taken out, swiping every single buyer on this pair, and then we could trade up higher with those rate cuts on the Swiss franc. So currently, with the supply zone, definitely look at a downside before moving up higher. Looking at Euro Swiss, like I said, I'm looking at downside now on all those pairs just for this week, or at least in the beginning of this week. And then after I see those news like articles or anything else about the Swiss franc wanting to cut rates, then I'm going to go long on these pairs. But currently, with the war going on, definitely in the beginning of the week, we could see some downside on all of the Swiss pairs, where I'm going to go over at the moment. So what do I see? We took liquidity at the lows, which pushed price back up higher. Now we do have some liquidity above this high, which I want to take out before shorting. Looking at the daily time frame, we can see that this demand zone is still in control, and that we should break this high, and then from there, okay guys, this demand is in control. We could break this high, creating a new demand zone, and then we could trade up higher towards this liquidity before moving down lower. But what this is, counter fundamentals, right? And that's not what we want to see. We want to see price being in line with the fundamentals. So I would like to see liquidity getting taken out and tapping the supply, and then we could take short setups. Now going over to the 4 hour, we're also 4 hour bearish, so that's something which is nice to take shorts. But as you can see, we have that open supply over here with that liquidity as well. So what could happen is that we also just continue up higher to take that supply. From here, I'm definitely looking at shorts currently when the fundamentals are in line. Now we could also see a quick sell-off, taking liquidity and then moving up higher again, because of the Swiss franc that should gain some strength because of it being the safe haven. We gotta see what is up, but currently my technicals are not in line with the fundamentals, because my fundamentals are bearish for this pair and my technicals bullish towards the supply. So I'm currently not going to trade this. As you can see, this pair also has been consolidating a lot, so I'm not going to actually do something with this pair. Going over to GBP Swiss, this is definitely a nice pair that I'm definitely going to trade. Now what do I see? We have bearish order flow because the supply zones are in control. Yeah, we took liquidity underneath this low, but if this pair fundamentally is already bearish and we tap this supply zone, we could just continue to trade down lower and eventually towards this swing low. Going over to the daily time frame, we can also see that we're swing bearish, and when we look at the 50% from the swing low towards the swing high, we already tapped the premium prices. So from here we could trade down lower. Now what also happened? Well, we created a supply zone which is now also in control, or actually this supply is now in control, and this one could push price also back down lower in order to take some short setups. And at least I want to see this liquidity get taken out, but currently I could see downside all the way until this low. Again, fundamentally that's what could happen, but when those rate cuts will come, we could see some upside here on the Swiss franc. Looking on the 4-hour time frame, we're also 4-hour bearish as well. So what am I looking for? This is my target currently on the GBP Swiss pair. We do have some liquidity above the highs which we could take out, tap this refined supply and also the 50% levels, then a break to the upside in order to have a fractal low, creating a supply zone, and then we could trade down lower, taking shorts towards liquidity. So that's something that could happen. Currently we know that this daily supply is also in control and could already push price down lower, but I do not like taking shorts already, even though that daily supply is in control, because we do have some liquidity as well as the supply as well as a 50% level still open, which we could tap before moving down lower. AUD Swiss, looking on the weekly time frame, this like AUD Swiss as well as NZD Swiss are fundamentally bearish at the moment because of the US that attacked Iran. So I'm looking at shorts here. I don't care what the technical says. I'm just looking for the short setups. Now we do see that the supply is in control, which is perfect for what I'm looking for. This supply is in control and I'm looking to trade down lower. Yeah, we did take some liquidity at the lows, as you can see, but we still have some more liquidity open, and in line with the fundamentals we could already take some more liquidity before moving up higher. So on the 4-hour time frame, we are 4-hour bullish, so that's something that is not really great, because as you can see, we're bullish, we took liquidity, we tapped the discount prices, so now we should trade up higher. Currently the order flow is still bearish. Why is that? Well, because this supply is still in control, and this supply could also still push price down lower. We now took some liquidity underneath or inside this supply zone, and now we also created a new supply zone as well. So from this supply, what could happen? Some downside, trading down lower. So do I like this? Technically not, but actually let's see though. I actually had my swing structure wrong, because this is my swing. Why is this my swing? Because this is not as big as the internal. You can see the internal is just like this, boom, boom. But this one, it takes liquidity, breaks structure, and then it moves up higher, actually having a pullback. So that's why I like this swing structure. And then you could also say that this is also your swing. Why is that? Let's see. Well, because we are bullish, but this is my internal structure over here, and as you can see, this is a real pullback looking against that internal structure. So this was actually my structure, which I had totally wrong, so that's on me, guys. But this then is going to be my structure, and then, as you guys know, because you guys watched my video on structure, this should be your structure bearish. So actually this is now looking pretty clean to take short setups. The only thing that is not really clean is that we took liquidity all the way at this low, like I said on the daily, but we do still have some liquidity open at those lows, which we could definitely take out. Now also, because we are bearish, we tapped those premium prices, I think. Yes, as you can see, we are bearish. we tapped premium prices, we took liquidity, we are inside supply, we then switched the order flow bearish internally, so definitely looking for shorts. What am I looking for? Well, currently we know that this supply is in control over here, so I'm just looking for the 1 hour and 15 minute inside this supply to take short setups, trading towards this liquidity and of course this liquidity. Currently just looking at shorts here on this pair. Also looking at NZD Swiss, this is also going to be shorts, shorts and shorts. Why is that? Fundamentals. So looking at the weekly time frame, we tapped this supply zone so we could trade down lower. On the daily time frame, we also created a new supply zone because we broke this low, creating this supply which we now could trade down lower. Looking at the 4 hour, we are also 4 hour bearish as well, and we do have bearish order flow. So as you can see, this supply is now in control, and I made a breakdown on this short as well, but next week I'm looking at more shorts. Why? We created a strong high, we have supply pushing price down lower, we tapped premium prices, and we're also bearish, and fundamentals should be bearish as well. So from this supply, I'm looking at short setups. Keep in mind, we do have a refined supply open over here. So we could also see a manipulation move, taking liquidity above this high, tapping this refined supply. And then once we then switch the order flow bearish again, that's a point to take those short setups. And that's a really great point as well. So that's what I'm currently waiting for NZD Swiss. Looking at CAD Swiss, also bearish as well because the CAD should drop. You can see we do have a lot of liquidity above the highs, which is not really that nice. But what are we doing? We are respecting the highs, not breaking the highs at all, and we're breaking the lows every single time. So we now could also just break the lows, continue the bearish order flow. We're also 4 hour bearish as well. We traded in towards the premium prices and we could just trade down lower. So I'm not going to show the week, or I'm just going to show the weekly, but as you can see, we have a weekly supply which could push price down lower. And on the daily time frame, what can we see? Well, we can see that this supply is now in control and this could push price down lower. Why is that? Because we traded up higher and then we trade down lower, creating this supply which could push price down lower. So I'm just looking at downside, even though we have liquidity above the highs, because the order flow is bearish. That is nice if the fundamental is bearish as well. If you then look at the 4 hour, you're bearish, you tapped premium prices, and yeah, the order flow is also bearish as well. So looking really clean here to take those short setups. Currently, this is your supply and control, but what could definitely happen? Of course, a liquidity grab above these little highs, tapping this refined supply, and then once we break the order flow back down again, creating new supply, then we could again take short setups. So that's what I'm also waiting for CAD Swiss. So I'm going to draw this refined zone in order to wait for all these early sellers to get swiped, and then I want to take short setups. Looking at USDCAD, I was looking at downside on the CAD as well as on the dollar. What does that mean? This pair should stay the same, right? If the dollar drops and the CAD trades down lower, on this pair it should trade up higher or push the pair up higher, so it should be the same. So fundamentally, this is not a really nice pair to trade. Currently, I think the dollar is really going to be super strong bearish, so I would look for some shorts over here once we tap the supply zone, trading towards this liquidity at least, and maybe this liquidity as well, but just probably the 50% level. Now going over to the weekly time frame, you can see we have bullish order flow, but we have this weekly supply where we definitely could see a reaction from. Looking at the daily time frame, yes, we are bullish, but as you can see, it's very far away, so we could now also take a small short as well, maybe on the 4 hour. Now looking on the daily though, we just turned daily order flow bullish. What does that mean? That we could trade up higher in line with this order flow, trading towards maybe the supply zone and at open liquidity. So definitely looking at upside, but what do we know? We did take a little bit of liquidity above this high, which could now push price back down lower, inside this demand, and then up higher. So we could also take the short setup, and then after that, take the long setup. So two setups over here. First one is a short in towards demand, and the second one is long up higher in towards that liquidity from this demand zone. So on the 4 hour, we are 4 hour bullish, right? But we could take a short setup, reason being the 50%. So what do I want to see? This is now our 50%, but I want to see I just want to see the order flow turn bearish, and then I could take short setups. So what do I want to see? This low needs to break, and then I could take short setups. Am I going to do that? I'm not going to do that. Why is that? Because if we break this low, we already tapped the daily demand, we take liquidity, and this could fuel the next move up higher. So that's why I'm not going to short this pair towards the 50%, because it's too risky with the daily order flow being bullish. Now what am I looking for then? Well, to stay away from the demand, trading up higher in towards the supply. Then from here, wait for the order flow switch without tapping this demand, and then I will take shorts towards that demand and the 50%, which is going to be around that liquidity. So that's going to be my target. I hope this is clear, but that's definitely something that I'm looking for next week. Looking at EURCAD, what can we see? Well, on the weekly time frame, the order flow is still being bullish, and we could see upside. We also took liquidity above this high, but we do have some more liquidity, which we could take out in line with that order flow. That's also what I'm looking for, because the dollar, yeah, I'm definitely bullish on this pair, definitely fundamentally. Why? The dollar should drop. Euro also acts a little bit as a safe haven, so it could push a little bit up higher, and a CAD doesn't act as a safe haven at all. People like get their money out of the CAD, so the CAD could drop, pushing this pair up higher. So I'm looking to take out some more liquidity above these weekly liquidity highs in line with the weekly order flow. That's definitely what I'm looking for. Looking over here at the daily time frame, this is also going to be my swing high as well, but it is going to be my swing high not yet. Why? Well, because as you can see, this is my internal trend, and this is all just the same. So this is all internal, and I would like to see a big pullback, and then this is going to be my swing high. Okay, so currently not my swing high, but my internal high, which we could still take out, definitely with this bullish, beautiful bullish order flow. So this is our demand, our latest demand in control, which could push price back up higher in towards this high. Looking on the 4 hour time frame, we're also 4 hour bullish. We did take some liquidity at these lows, and now we also have that bullish order flow, which could push price back up higher, where in towards the 4 hour swing, of course, and that weekly liquidity. So currently, what do I want to see? Well, from this demand zone, I want to look at higher prices. So what do I want to see here? See that we have some liquidity. We have this demand zone, and that's exactly what I'm waiting for. I'm looking for a retracement, taking some internal liquidity inside this demand and also this demand, and then want to see either the lower time frame or the 4 hour changed fractal bullish. That's when I take long setups in towards the highs, and those are definitely A+ setups to take in line with the fundamentals and the technical order flow, as well as 4 hour swing. So definitely something to keep in mind for next week. Looking at GBPCAD, yes, we did take liquidity above this high, but we have bullish order flow and could still trade up higher to take liquidity at this high before moving down lower. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Looking at the daily time frame, we are daily bullish. We tapped discount prices, we traded up higher, but now we have some more liquidity laying over here with this daily demand still being open. This supply is also in control, so I would want to see a swipe, taking liquidity and tapping this demand, and this is my A+ like a long setup, and here I'm definitely going to take longs on GBPCAD, trading up higher in towards a swing high to take out liquidity above all these highs. So that's what I'm waiting for GBPCAD. Not going to take any shorts, not going to take any longs until we tap this demand, and then I'm going to go over to the 4 hour, wait for my 4 hour break, and then I'm going to go long. So let's go over to the next pair, because I don't have to say anything, because that's just what I'm waiting for. Looking at NZDCAD, I'm just going to say, am I going to trade this pair next week? No. Am I going to analyze it? Yes. Why am I not going to trade this? As you can see, this is just consolidating from max, right? So what do we see? We take liquidity underneath the low, and we do have liquidity above the high, so I still want to trade up higher on this pair, even though this supply is still in control, just because of the liquidity play. Now it could still definitely happen that this supply just pushes price down lower, but what am I going to do? Look at the fundamentals. Fundamentally, risk on, risk off, this pair should consolidate, what it's also doing with all the uncertainty, but I'm going to get a little bit deeper inside the fundamentals on this pair, because I would like to know if we could see some upside, then we could take liquidity. But if the fundamentals say that we could see some downside, we could already take shorts from this supply. Currently I have no idea, so I still got to check that. Now it's consolidating, so I still have time to check. So next week I'm definitely not taking any trades, because I do not have any point where I want to trade, because it's risky to take shorts because of the open liquidity, but it's also risky to take longs because of the supply in control. So currently NZDCAD, as you can see, consolidating, not the best pair. Wouldn't advise to actually trade this pair unless you're really good with consolidation or you just see a beautiful setup. Looking at AUDCAD on the weekly time frame, we took a lot of liquidity at the lows, and we still didn't take any liquidity above the highs, not even internal. So I could still see some upside before moving down lower. So that's also what I'm waiting for. On the daily time frame, we still have an open refined supply as well as that liquidity, but we also have liquidity at the lows. So I would like to see a swipe of the lows, then moving up higher, and then trading down lower. This is what I'm waiting for. Am I going to take shorts from here? Let's see on the 4 hour. On the 4 hour, what do I see? 4 hour is bearish, so we could see downside. But like I said, this is definitely a point where I want to trade towards in the near future. Are we already going to trade towards that, or are we first going to see a swipe before moving up higher? Definitely what I'm going to try and do after taking this daily liquidity, I would like to see my order flow switch bullish, and then we could take longs in towards this point of interest, or we already have bearish order flow with this supply being in control. And then we could still see some downside here on AUDCAD towards this liquidity. So that's also a possibility in line with the trend and the order flow. So definitely nice. If we swipe the low over here, we create a new supply zone. So then we could take a short setup to trade down lower in towards this liquidity. So definitely nice because we break structure. We are bearish. We took also a 4 hour liquidity. We are respecting the highs, so we could just trade down lower, take liquidity at the lows. Definitely something I'm looking for next week. Looking at the yen pairs, which are my last pairs, looking on the weekly time frame, like I said, I'm looking now for upside on the yen. Why? Because of the safe haven, right? So currently we are bullish. We have bullish order flow with this demand now being in control, could push price back up higher. Now I'm going to show you why we still could see a swipe underneath these lows before moving up higher, but that's on the 4 hour. Then we also have this supply open. This is my target now for this safe haven push. So that's also what I'm targeting for next week and the weeks after that. Looking on the daily time frame, yes, we do have all of the liquidity underneath these lows as well as an open daily demand zone, but I would like to see upside on the yen fundamentally with all the liquidity above the highs as well. Now let's see. Okay, so we already broke this. So now what is in control? This supply is in control, and this supply could push price back down lower even more, take some more liquidity, and then we could see upside. But looking at the 4-hour, we're bullish, and we now took liquidity underneath this low. That's definitely something to keep in mind. And now if we see the order flow switch bullish, or actually breaking this high, we create demand, we could take out all of the highs in line with those fundamentals. So that's what I'm waiting for on the yen. But we gotta keep in mind that we have a refined demand with some more liquidity underneath the lows as well. So we could tap that before moving up higher. Either way, I would like to see the order flow switch bullish even though we tap this demand. So either we now already switch order flow bullish by breaking this high, or we could tap this demand, then switch the order flow bullish by breaking this high, or maybe something like this, breaking this high. That's something we gotta wait for, but only then. I'm looking for those longs on the yen. Currently, we could see a downside, but fundamentally, definitely upside. So also on all the yen pairs, which I'm going to review, I'm looking for upside on the yen. So looking at euro yen, when there's upside on the yen, this should mean a downside on all these XXX JPY pairs. So let's take a look. Looking at the weekly time frame, we are now inside this supply. We took liquidity above this high, perfect point to take short setups. Looking at the daily time frame, we now took liquidity above this daily high, so we could take short setups. Now this demand is currently in control, and this demand could definitely push price back up higher. But the thing is, we just took liquidity and fundamentally we're definitely bearish, so we could see that downside happen on this pair to trade down lower. And that's also what I'm waiting for. So the best setup is to wait for the order flow to turn bearish in order to take shorts towards all of these liquidity lows. Now, because the fundamentals are so bearish for this pair at the moment for me, we could already look for short setups towards those discount prices here on the 4-hour. So we took the higher time frame liquidity. Now I want to see the order flow switch bearish, creating supply, and then I would like to take shorts towards the 50% levels. That's my go-to on euro yen. Let's now take a look at GBP yen on the weekly time frame first. So on the weekly, nothing much to see. Let's go over to the daily time frame. This is where where everything is more clear. We have an open supply zone, an imbalance candle. We swipe the high, one more time, and now we even swipe it one more time. But we still miss this high or this supply zone. So I want to see that supply getting tapped, and then I want to see move down lower to take liquidity underneath all the lows. Currently, the order flow is still bullish with this demand being in control, which still could push price back up higher in towards this supply. Now, once we see this step, we could see the order flow switch bearish, and then we could trade down lower. I'm already going to take short setups, even though the order flow here is bullish on the daily. I'm going to take shorts on the 4-hour. Reason being is the strong fundamental that I see, which is bearish on this pair. So on the 4-hour, we are also bullish, but like I said, once the order flow switch bearish, I could take short setups. So this is going to be my swing high over here. Right, and then once we swipe that swing high, I could take lower time frame shorts in towards the 50% level, and then from here we either trade up higher in line with the trend, or we trade down lower in line with the fundamentals. But once again, what's the price movement that we should know? This move down lower. So be patient, wait for the high to get swiped, wait for your order flow to be bearish, and then take short setups. Going over to USD yen, definitely bearish on this pair, super bearish on this pair actually. Why is that? Dollar should jump and the yen should trade up higher. What does it mean? This pair is going to drop and take out all of these lows. I'm 100% sure if the fundamentals are correct. So looking at the weekly time frame, we have this supply which could push price down lower. We have some liquidity to take out even more. So let's see. But on the daily time frame, it's a bit more clear. Why is that? Well, on the daily time frame, we are bearish. We have the 50% level, and we have this open supply. Now it already took liquidity, which is more important for me because this supply over here is refined. Now this is the actual supply which is in control, and as you can see, we already tapped that, grab liquidity in this side, this supply, and we could trade down lower. Now this refined supply is still definitely something to take a look at because we could see a swipe of the high one more time, tapping this refined supply as well as the 50% levels, and then we could trade down lower. Now with the fundamentals being so bearish, and we also flipped this low, which is now in control, this supply zone, and we now could see downside because of this supply. We have some liquidity above this high, which I want to see taken out, and then we could take out liquidity underneath all of these lows, and eventually this low as well. So that's what I'm definitely looking for, downside here, also just because the fundamentals as well. But let's take a look. So currently this is going to be my swing high and this is my swing low. We made a pullback, grabbing some liquidity, but now it looks like we're going to swipe the high one more time. And actually, why is that? Well, you can see a lot of sellers stepping into the market, big moves. This could be manipulation to attract all of those sellers. We then swipe that, and then we could take shorts to take out all of the lows. So that's what I'm waiting for. Now again, how do I wait for the shorts? We swipe the high, definitely something what I want to see. If not, that's also fine because we could respect that and then trade down lower. I just want to see the order flow turn bearish, which is going to be this low, and then we could trade down lower, take shorts towards all of these lows and this demand and liquidity as well. So that's my go-to for next week, which is definitely looking really, really nice. Same on ADN, looking at downside on this pair. Why? Well, you can see we took liquidity underneath this low, but we have this supply being in control as well as taking some more liquidity, internal liquidity, which could now fuel back down lower. Now also we broke the fractal low again, so this is now another supply being in control and could push price back down lower. Looking on the daily time frame, yeah, we do have liquidity above all of these highs, but if it's fundamentally bearish, and on the weekly we have bearish order flow as well as this daily order flow being bearish, definitely downside that is possible for me. Now the only thing that I want to see is the 4-hour order flow being bearish, but what can I see? We're 4-hour structure bearish, we took liquidity, we are inside this supply, and now let's see, is the order flow bearish? So again, we took some more liquidity, again swipe the high even more, and now the order flow is not bearish for me. Why not? Because we swiped that high over here, boom, and then what happened? Down lower and then up higher. So currently this demand is still in control as well as my order flow. So the shorts are not the best, but yeah, let's see, because if we already broke the fractal down lower multiple times and now we took some internal liquidity, if we break this low, even though the 4-hour and daily order flow is bullish, fundamentally we're very bearish on this pair, and we took some liquidity as well as the structure is bearish. We took some more liquidity, swiped the lows or the highs. So if we start breaking the lows multiple times and we start respecting those highs, then I'm already taking shorts just because we have a lot of liquidity at the lows, and fundamentally we're definitely bearish. Looking at NZD yen on the weekly time frame, we're order flow bullish because this demand is in control, and this could push price back up higher into its refined supply, take some more liquidity above the highs. That's also what I'm waiting or looking for on this pair. Fundamentally at the moment we're not bullish on this pair, so that's why I'm possibly not going to take any setup here. So yeah, we did take some internal liquidity above this high, and then above this high, and then even above this high. So we now could see a dump down lower, but we still have a refined supply with some more liquidity which we could tap before moving down lower, and we even have some more refined supply which you could even tap before moving down lower. So currently I should be bullish with this order flow being bullish as well, and all of the open zones that we have. But am I going to take a long setups? No, because fundamentally we're not bullish on this pair. Looking at the 4-hour time frame, what can we see to begin with? Well, we're 4 hour bullish, so I'm not going to take any pairs, and I'm just going over to the next one because fundamentally we're bearish on this pair, but technically we're so bullish, because if the fundamentals here were bullish on this pair, I would definitely take long setups, but the fundamentals are bearish. Now if the fundamentals flip bullish, what would I wait on? Well, we made a push up higher. We have some internal liquidity left to grab inside this demand. I would like to see that getting grabbed, and then if for our fractal, then I would see some longs. Again, this is only when the fundamentals change bullish again. Looking at the Swiss yen, I'm looking at downside. Why? Well, we predicted the longs all the way over here, taking out all of the liquidity highs towards the supply. But from here, I'm looking for downside towards this demand. Why am I looking at downside? Fundamentally, I think this pair is a little bearish based on safe haven. Why? They are both safe haven currencies, but there is a slight risk that the Swiss yen should cut rates whilst the yen is not going to, possibly, or there's no, like, the risk on both of these pairs, there's a higher risk on the Swiss that they should cut rates. So that's why I'm bearish on this pair, because then the Swiss could dump against the yen. So this demand is still open. We broke structure. This supply is also something that we just tapped, so we could see downside in towards this demand. That's something what I'm looking for. On the daily time frame, we have this supply being in control, as well as some more liquidity, but you can see that this order flow is also still in control, right? This demand is in control. Now this could also perfectly be the first step, and then the swipe of the early sellers to then trade down lower. So that's definitely a possibility. What I know, fundamentally we're kind of bearish, so when I see on the 4 hour that there is confirmation, I'm going to already short, because we're inside that weekly supply. So what do I want to see? The order flow switched bearish. So this is my order flow breaking, or actually, let's see. Yeah, I just want to see a tap in towards this, trending up higher and then trading down lower to create a supply zone, order flow bearish, and then take those short setups. Or I would like to see this logo, which is also my daily order flow, in order to take shorts towards those discount prices and liquidity. So those are my two go-tos on this pair to take short setups. Looking at CAD yen on the weekly time frame, we took liquidity, tapped this demand, and then also created a new demand. So order flow is bullish, structure is bullish, we should see some upside. Now the only thing is the monthly, which is this demand being in control. So fundamentally, what's the fundamental bullish and bearish? So fundamentally this pair is also definitely bearish. Now what do we see here on the monthly? We have supply being in control, which could push price back down lower. So even though the weekly order flow is bullish, if the daily order flow and 4 hour order flow is bearish, we could take short setups in line with the monthly level. So let's take a look at the daily. Let's take a look. We just tapped the refined supply, we tapped liquidity, but the order flow is still holding with this demand being in control. But fundamentally it's bearish. So when we break the order flow, that's when I take shorts towards the lows and that monthly demand, which I talk about. So I would like to see that order flow switch either like this or like this, right? So what do I then see? When the order flow switch bearish on the daily time frame, I would like to go over to the 4 hour to inside that supply, look for a 4 hour fractal change, something like this. And then I would like to short all the way until those lows. So that's what I'm waiting for. Currently the order flow on the 4 hour is already bearish, but I would like to see that daily order flow also flip bearish, because that's just way higher probability. My last pair is EURGBP, and this now could push price up higher. You can see with the tariffs a lot of uncertainty, and when there is uncertainty around the world, we saw a push on this pair. Now with the war in Iran, you see that, like, this is not from the war, but there was some uncertainty. You see another push. So when there's uncertainty on this pair, we will push up higher. So we could see some more upside here on this pair for the next couple of days, maybe even weeks. So now we took even more daily liquidity above this high. So fundamentally, we could trade up higher. Also technically, we are daily bullish. From this demand, we created daily bullish order flow. We tapped discount prices, we could see upside. Now the only thing that I do not like is this daily, or actually there's nothing that I actually do not like, because we have some more liquidity over here which I like to trade towards, and also we have this demand being in control, which I'm looking to go long from for next week. Why? Because the fundamentals are so bullish with this war going on. So yeah, that's definitely what I'm looking for. Over here you can also see this demand. So what am I currently looking for? Just a tap inside the demand, creating a fractal bullish moment, and once we turn fractal bullish, then I will take more long setups towards this liquidity and this supply zone. So thank you guys for listening. I think this was a longer one than normal, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you guys in next one. Ciao.